Hi, and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. In today's video, a little bit of a different topic, talking about where have all the experts gone. You know, when you call a professional to do something, you expect that they are going to be the ones that know more than you. I'm finding a lot that is not the case. So let's talk about that in today's video. You can probably see a little bit of a greenish hue coming across this area where we put the topsoil down and planted grass seed. You'll see the video of that coming up in a couple days. But that got me thinking a little bit about professionals and hiring experts to do work. When we very first started having our water problem, where the toilet in the basement wasn't flushing right, and I was worried that maybe the septic tank was clogged or even the leach field was clogged, I called a professional because they should know more than me, right? I tried to call some local plumbers or local people that might be able to come and check things out. I had a hard time getting in touch with anybody. When I was able to get in touch with someone, it was one of those national franchise chains, and I'm not going to say who it was, but they were able to quickly get someone to come out and take a look at it. So they came out, and there was no charge when they first got here, just to take a look, but then they offered advice, what things they could try, and I was surprised that they didn't really know much more than me, and their first suggestion was to try to snake the line. And the guy said, well, as soon as I get the snake out of the truck, it's $450 plus. And I said, well, let's go ahead and try it. We'd rather know if there's a clog in the line, or if you'd be able to tell by putting that snake out exactly how far the septic tank was, because remember, we weren't exactly sure where the tank was in the backyard. So thankfully, when we built the house, we put this clean out on here, which makes it easy to snake the septic line. So basically, all he did when he came in was get his snake here, take the cap off of the clean out, put the snake down the line, snake all the way up to the septic tank, determine there was no clog, and that was almost $500 total. As far as anything beyond that, he couldn't offer much expertise, didn't know what else to try next, so that was the end of his services for us. So there was nothing more he could do at that point. One of the funny things about that experience that wasn't very funny was that when his motorized snake stopped working at some point, it kind of fell apart. He wasn't sure how to fix it and didn't have any tools. So I had to grab tools out of my toolbox, show him how to fix it. We put that thing back together, and he used it to continue snaking the line out here towards the septic tank. But I found that it was interesting in talking to him. Basically, he knew not as much as me, probably less than me when it came to plumbing and certainly about septic systems. So that was a shocker to me that I just paid $500 to someone who maybe had a tool that I didn't have, though I could have gone out and bought a snake for about $80. But had basically no more knowledge about the subject than I did. This is my second "there's no experts left" example. So this is an outside spigot. It typically probably would be in someone's yard, but this is what I used here in my garage. And I have water buried under the ground, comes into the bottom of this hydrant, and then comes up, and this is where I get any outside water. So to wash cars, I hook a hose onto here. If we're watering plants, if I need to fill a bucket up outside, this is the faucet for that. Now normally this handle's on it, looks a little something like this. You can see I've already disassembled it. The problem I'm having is this year, for some reason I couldn't get it to shut off. So I watched some YouTube videos and discovered that usually the problem is at the bottom of this rod, there's a rubber plunger that sits in a seat. So you know, if all these pieces were back on here, this would be on top of here. The handle would go through it. It would put down pressure on this rod, and that would force the plunger to sit in the seat, stop the flow of water. Now this all happens about 3 feet under the ground, below the freeze line here in Northwest Pennsylvania. So in the wintertime, when you turn this off, there's not the fear of water freezing in this pipe. So after I watched the video of how to take this apart and see if the plunger's the problem, the next step was trying to disassemble this top spigot off of the pipe. I used a pipe wrench here and an open-ended wrench here. Jennifer held the pipe wrench to try to keep this from twisting as I tried to twist the top off. Couldn't get it off, and I thought, well, the other option is to replace it, but let me show you why that's a problem. So this does go into a piece of 2-inch PVC pipe, down through the cement, and it would actually come from right about here, 3 feet down buried. It would come around here, underneath the sidewalk, and it actually goes in right about where the power also goes into our garage. They are buried in the same trench, just at different depths. Now, when this was first put in, the sidewalk was not here. So what we did was we dug way down here, a big hole, about 3 feet deep, ran that water line, made the connection to that hydrant inside. Remember, that's 3 feet down. Now my problem is I've got sidewalk here, and I can't really dig down deep enough there and get my hand down and then back in to get that fitting off. But it may be what I have to try, because when I called the experts, this is what they said. So when I called a professional HVAC and plumbing company in the area, they came out. The first thing they told me was that this type of faucet won't work in my garage. It'll freeze up in the wintertime. And I said, well, we've been using it for 22 years. And they didn't understand how it worked. And how it works, if I understand correctly, is that when you're using it, the water comes all the way up the pipe, out the spigot. When you shut it off and it presses this plunger down, it actually evacuates all the water, creates a vacuum backwards down through, and dispenses that water underneath the ground. So even if you have a hose attached to here, you'll actually feel it sucking the water back through that hose and depositing it in the ground 3 feet down. You feel that vacuum going through the hose. So then there is no water in whatever's attached to this, in the spigot part, in the pipe part, all the way down to that 3 foot down in the ground point where it connects to my water line. So these are perfectly safe here in Northwest Pennsylvania to run in the wintertime, as long as you've got them buried deep enough and your water line is deep enough. Now on super cold days, below freezing days, minus wind chills, if these are out in the middle of a field or in an unheated area, I have seen some people say they can freeze up. So if you're in, Wisconsin, Upper Michigan, Minnesota, Canada, Alaska, any of our friends further north than us, these may not work all winter long. You may actually have to turn them off and blow them out. But for the most part, here in Northwest Pennsylvania, these are okay to use throughout the year because of how they operate. But I had to explain that to the expert that came to work on this, to the professional. And he didn't come out for free. It cost $75 just to have him come look at this. I remember when people would come out and look at a project for free, they would say free estimates in all their advertising. Then once they got here, so what the problem was, they would give you a quote or an estimate on the repair. That was the next question I asked this professional. I said, okay, here's what I think needs to happen. I think you can unscrew this, take this rod up out until you get to the plunger, see if the plunger's bad on the bottom, see if we can replace that part, and then we'll just put this back together rather than trying to dig down under the ground and replace the whole pipe and the whole spigot. He said that probably the only way is to dig it up out of the ground. And I still thought of other ways. I thought, well, and I asked him, again, because he's the expert, I said, what if you took a pipe cutter, cut the pipe right here, then take all this off, pull this up through, see if we can replace the guts that are down in there. We'll thread this section of pipe, put a coupler on there so it's the same height again, the rod length is appropriate, and that would be one way to fix it. He said, well, he'd have to look into that. I asked what type of price we'd be looking at to do the work. Couldn't give me any estimate. I said, well, I'd like to know whether it's $500, $1,000, $2,000, because if we're talking big money, it might be better for me to try to run another water line somewhere else outside or find another way to fix this spigot. He couldn't give me an estimate, said he'd have to do some research, then get back to me. Now, I don't mind if people have to research things they don't know. I'd much rather they tell me they don't know, so I appreciated that. But it was another case of I paid $75 for someone to come out and look at something, and I'm no further ahead than I was before. I had already disassembled all this, so the only thing that expert did was try to take this off of the pipe, which I had already tried to do. Now, since that time, I've been spraying these threads a little bit at a time with some Kroil. And if you've never used Kroil or Aero Kroil, this is my favorite thing to use to get nuts and bolts apart or any other rusted surfaces. This is actually, they call it the oil that creeps, loosens frozen metal parts. In my experience, this works better than WD-40 or the other options to try to get something like this apart. So now for a couple times today, I've been spraying these threads, trying to get them, trying to get this crow to creep up in there, and then tomorrow I'll give another go at trying to twist this off of the pipe. Croil, I'll put an Amazon affiliate link down below in the description. So I've got another example. We're gonna go back inside. Maybe Jennifer will join us and we'll talk about another time where the experts aren't really the experts, and the frustration is growing with me. When you hire a professional to come do something, you think that they're gonna know a little bit more about the project than you will, and they will be the experts. And what I'm finding is, certainly I've gained knowledge over the last 22 years of being a homeowner. I know a lot more now than I knew then, but surprisingly, it seems like I'm knowing more than the experts that I'm paying to come look at some of these projects or things that need attention. It's not ready yet. Before we go inside and look at that third example, I'd like to hear from you guys. A, if you have any tips for me on how to fix that spigot in the garage. And B, if you've had experiences like me where you've hired experts only to find out that maybe they don't have the expertise you had hoped they had, and that it's costing you a lot of money, in this case $75 for the guy to come out and look at the spigot and me to explain to him how it works, and $500 for the guy to come out and tell us that he doesn't know how to look at the septic system and run a snake through it. If you do know an expert, it's really hard to get on their schedule because everybody knows they are a professional, they are an expert, and they are booked way far in advance. There have been times where I've called the expert and either can't get on his schedule, my project's too small to be on his schedule, or they have so much work they can't even, talk to you about future work because they've got to catch up with all the work they've got. So if you are an expert at what you do, it's certainly a great time to be an expert, but I think there's a shortage of experts out there, and I'm finding it's harder and harder and harder to find people that are skilled at a particular skill set to handle different types of problems that are, I think, beyond my expertise. But what I'm finding is I know more than I thought I knew, and I've got pretty good mechanical aptitude. I understand how things work, and a lot of times that's part of the process of understanding how to fix something. Now, with this situation of the spigot outside the garage, I'm still not sure how to fix that. My only thought is to use almost like post hole diggers, try to dig 3 feet down right in between the sidewalk and the garage, see if I can get my arm down in there. I just don't think there's going to be enough space to work now that the sidewalk is there. My third example of where have all the experts gone is right here in the house. You can see we are missing our microwave and vent. And we actually have not had an operating microwave here since the middle of 2020. Multiple times I've tried to find the microwave that will bolt up here. They were on back order, there was supply chain issues. We ordered multiple of them that they said were gonna fit, and then we got in here and we couldn't get them to fit. Jennifer and I will talk to you a little bit more about that story, but I've actually started shooting a video 5 times now of replacing this microwave, only to find that the microwave we bought from the experts wasn't the right one. It's really only been a couple weeks that we haven't physically had the microwave here. We still had it mounted to the wall. Every time we'd take it down to install a new one and the new one didn't fit, we'd mount the old one back up. But since 2020, we've been using this little countertop microwave and had no vent for above the oven and stove. Jennifer's got some chicken cooking here on the stove, but we'll tell you the story of our microwave number 5, which, as you can see, is not installed because it didn't fit once again. So, like I said, we've been looking for a microwave for a long time, and we do have experts in the appliance field that are locally, a local business, a local family business that's been supplying us all the appliances for our house ever since we did the renovation. And they are experts in their field, but like I said earlier, when you do have an expert in their field, they're extremely busy, and that has been the case. They have been unable to find us a microwave because of back orders and supply chain issues, and then when they are kind of super busy, sometimes I think they forget to keep looking. So at some point we decided to go to one of the box stores, and I won't say which one, but we went to a box store. Jennifer and I walked in, we looked at a microwave, and we said, hey, we need a microwave, and I showed them the mounting pattern, and the first thing the guy said was, Jennifer?
I used to install microwaves, and every single one is the same pattern.
They're all the same. Doesn't matter which one you pick, they all have the same mounting pattern. So I was like, well, I can tell you, I haven't installed a whole bunch of them, but I've installed at least 3, and they are not the same pattern every single time. That's why we're looking for this specific pattern. So I showed him once again the pattern. He reluctantly got a ladder to climb up and see the display models that they have hanging. Since these are over the range microwaves, they've got them hanging high, and you can't see that mounting pattern. So he got a ladder, wouldn't let me climb up it, but would take his tape measure across. He's like, oh yeah, any of these will work. It's all what you need. And I was like, well, that can't be the case, because one of them was one that we actually had already tried, or looked like the one we had tried previously. A manager came over and he took the tape measure up and he's like, no, these are different. This one's 8.5 inches from the back. This one's 9.25 from the back. This one's 21 inches apart between the bolt holes. This one's 27 inches apart. So finally, after he measured them, he found us one that he said was the right pattern. Now remember, we couldn't go up on the ladder and check ourselves, but they said, we're gonna go ahead and order this, and when you get it, it'll be the right one. So then we were like, well, at least we're gonna have one. We hate to not support the local business, but we've been waiting so long. We got that microwave in, delayed. We got a notification it would be late. It came.
And a $60 shipping fee.
Yeah, $60 shipping fee and delayed. Came in late. I was busy with work and didn't get to try to install it that very night, so I think probably a week later, we tried the install, and super frustrated to find out that it was the right distance apart, but it wasn't a symmetrical pattern. So it would have been 27 inches like from this edge to here, and then also the vent out the back wasn't lined up right in the center, so we would have had to cut this hole or somehow adapt to make that work. So took it back to the box store, and it was not easy. It was over an hour of time to try to get them to not charge me a restocking fee, to refund the shipping fee. So that was just all a fiasco. And the lesson learned there is, A, those box stores don't have the experts either, even though their commercials may tell you they do. It's not like the old days when you go to the hardware store and that guy behind the counter knew seemingly everything about electrical and plumbing and heating and anything you would need for your home. That's not the case anymore. In my experience, those people that work at those stores are not always the experts. So there's 3 examples of, trying to pay an expert to do something that I thought was beyond what I should be trying to do on my own, and 3 examples of paying money to someone who wasn't actually the expert. As you can see here, we've got lots of steam that should be going out the exhaust fan, but we don't have one. Now I do want to add that we have experts in our area, and we have appreciated that Larry, our mechanic, is definitely an expert. Lots of stuff I could not do, that he can figure out problems every single time. Mike that cut those trees down for us, definitely an expert, took care of those trees that were close to the house. We've got other examples like that of experts in our area. It just seems like they're fewer and farther between and harder to find. Hopefully you found this video informative and entertaining. Jennifer, anything I forgot?
No, it's just been very, very difficult to find someone to help us with a microwave.
Yeah, it's hard to believe basically 3 years without our regular microwave, just using this countertop model. So thanks for watching. We'll see you again the next time.